From the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
Good morning and welcome to the KDPG Sunday Edition. I'm John Delano. You may have heard it before, someone saying nothing ever gets done in Harrisburg. And admittedly, there have been a few years of gridlock and extended budget battles. But politics is the art of the possible, and over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of action inside the state capitol. New laws will end the time limit to file charges of child sexual abuse, ban sales of tobacco to people under age 21, and allow for hunting on 3 different Sundays. There's also been movement on some things that haven't changed in years, like the $7.25 minimum wage, which has not gone up in 10 years. My guest this morning on the KDPG Sunday Edition is right in the middle of the action in Harrisburg. State Senate Democratic leader Jay Costa, whose district includes parts of Pittsburgh and the city's eastern suburbs. One editorial note, we also reached out to 4 Republican state senators from southwestern Pennsylvania. They were unable to join us on the program during this holiday weekend. But we are so pleased to have Jay Costa here. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Happy to be with you.
How do you contrast the action in Harrisburg the past month with inaction for a number of years?
Well, I think a lot of opportunities presented themselves where they had moved through the process over the course of the months leading up to where we were at now. And knowing that we'll be soon going on our winter break before we come back in January, there was a strong desire to address many of these issues before we got into 2020. So the opportunity presented itself at that point.
You know, what's remarkable to me is that while we see gridlock in Washington with a Democratic House and a Republican Senate and a Republican president, in Harrisburg, you've got a Republican-controlled Senate, a Republican-controlled House, but a Democratic governor, and you seem to have lawmakers willing to work across party lines. Is that true?
That's absolutely true, and I can speak for the Senate. We work closely on many issues and priorities with respect to what we want to try to advance. And we also have a governor who also weighs in. So it's sort of, at least in the Senate, a 3-way conversation about, as you mentioned earlier, what is the possible? And you work towards trying to achieve what we can agree to get done. Many instances, like we learned this past week, we'd like to go further, but we recognize that there are limitations in terms of what we would be able to get past. But we work closely to try to do what the people want us to work on and get things done.
Well, let's go over some of those issues and help us to understand exactly what you did do.
Okay.
Child sexual abuse in general. We're talking here about statutes of limitations that really limit the ability of law enforcement to go after people and the ability to sue an institution, say a church or a clergy member, when there's been abuse. What exactly did you enact?
So we enacted primarily 4 recommendations that came out of Attorney General Shapiro's grand jury review and report, and also the recommendations I mentioned. So there were 4. One of them dealt with non-disclosure agreements, prohibiting those.
So now you can't sign an agreement with a church that says we're not going to talk about this.
That's exactly right. And you can't prohibit them from going to the police, for example, whatever. So that's no longer permitted. We also did an enhancement with respect to the reporting requirements. After the Sandusky incidents that took place, we expanded the right to know, and the right to report, and understanding the report certain instances once you learn of them. We expanded the penalties if you don't report, if you do know something.
And by the way, this applies to everybody, not just churches.
Exactly right. The third thing that we did was dealing with the criminal statute of limitations. We eliminated that. In the past, there have been a criminal statute of limitation that says you couldn't bring criminal charges against someone after a certain period of time. That has been eliminated with child abusers. With respect to 18-year-olds and 18 to 24, if you're under 24, older than 18, it'd be 20 years they would have. So we sort of broke that down into 2 categories.
So again, I want to restate this. So for those minors, if a minor has been abused by anyone,
under age 18,
under age 18, law enforcement can go after the abuser 50 years from now.
50 years from now. If the person is abused between 18 and 24, which are the college age years is why we did this, they would have 20 years from the time of that incident that occurred.
Why wouldn't you lift that all together?
I think there are a variety of different reasons. I think that folks were uncomfortable with going totally without without any limitations. So that's kind of, again, it was a compromise. We wanted to go to 26. We settled on 24.
So if you're 25 and older and you've been abused sexually, What is the statute?
The statute would be based upon the old criminal statute, which gives you a number of years, 5 years, for example, from the time that it happened if you're 25.
Right. So if you've been abused sexually
Like
over 25 and over,
yeah,
you've got to.
You got the standard, the regular statute of limitations.
So you've got to get to the cops and report it.
Yeah. The other thing we did within that space was on the civil side. So what we also allowed, again, under the age of 18, you have to age 55 to bring a civil claim. So that's something we did as well. And then if you are under the age between the age of 18 and 24, you have to age 30 to be able to file civil claims along those lines.
Gets a little complicated, but
yeah. The fourth thing we did, which I think is important, is still controversial, relates to amending the Constitution. So there's an effort now to amend the Pennsylvania Constitution to say that if the voters approve, there will be a 2-year window, a 2-year look back. So if someone was abused 25 years ago when they were 10 years of age, right now they don't have a cause of action civilly against folks. They can now go to maybe file a claim, and if it's a credible claim, be reimbursed. The goal was to have an automatic legislative or statutory 2-year window. We were not able to get that done. That's something we're going to continue to fight for. But what we did pass instead was a 2-year, the first leg of a constitutional amendment that said if the voters agree, there will be a 2-year window look back. So that's a process. The problem with us and what I see in doing a statute of limitation by the constitutional amendment, it's a delay tactic in my view. Many constitutional amendments don't ever happen. Redistricting has been around for a number of years. It took us 10 years to do the one with witnesses with respect to videotaping witnesses. So you look at all these different constitutional amendment processes that sometimes they never happen, and that's what our concern was. That's why we're pushing a 2-year statutory window.
So let's talk about a couple other things. Raising the age to purchase tobacco to 21, but you've exempted military, the veterans. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be.
That was controversial. With at least the American Lung Association.
Yeah, I think who felt everyone should have been. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a desire. These folks are fighting for us around the world and protecting us here on the home front. On military bases, they would be permitted to be able to do that. But the goal was to limit the number of individuals who had access to not only tobacco products, cigarettes and cigars and the like, but also the e-cigarettes and the vaping, which has also been a big subject lately. So we think we did a good thing by advancing that forward. I know there's folks who are concerned about the exemption, but at the end of the day, our goal was to minimize the number of kids who are having access to tobacco products.
I mentioned the minimum wage in our opening. We've been stuck at $7.25 for a number of years. And over a decade. The state Senate has passed legislation. Tell us about it, but you still await action from the state House.
So last week we passed a plan to increase the minimum wage over the course of the next 25 months. In January 2022, we will be $9.50. July 1 of 20, we go to $8, which will be a 75 cent. It's a gradual increase. Our concern is we need to go further. I think a lot of us would have liked to seen us go maybe into the $10 to $11 range and then build on that with maybe an adjustment, but we're not there yet. But the House has to pass what we did, and there's indications that they may not do that, so we'll see.
So if I understand correctly, it sounds like this was a deal between a Democratic governor and a Republican Senate majority. To a large degree it was, I think, but it's hard to walk away from giving somebody a raise that we talked about, $4,500, $4,600 a year, 2 years from now. So we think we should be more, and we know that coming into 21, we may have an opportunity. We always have 25 Why would anyone vote against this? I mean, was this unanimous? Close to unanimous?
I think it was. I think in the Senate, I think it was close to.
Yeah, I think
exactly right.
But why would anyone in the House vote against this? It's long overdue.
Well, I think that there's some concerns about the impact on employers. Employers of small businesses simply can't handle and be able to absorb some of the costs associated with it. There are a number of other things we should be doing in this space. I'm a believer that we should have local preemption. The state prohibits Pittsburgh, for example, from having their own minimum wage. For people in Pittsburgh know, and the workers know, and the people who live here know what they can be able to get with respect to being able to manage a minimum wage.
You'd like to see a local option?
I want to see a local option, so we're going to push that as well.
A couple other issues, hunting on Sundays.
Yeah.
You like that idea?
I was not a fan of hunting on Sunday. I did not support it, but a number of my colleagues did. But it was, again, one of those conversations that took a long while for us to get her because we need to reach a compromise. There are many folks who wanted many more Sundays, but it worked its way down to a point where they can get a consensus to get enough folks to pass it, and the governor was willing to sign it, and that's how it played out.
I heard mixed reactions from hunters on this. Not all of them favor hunting.
Yeah, and I think you hear mixed reaction from a lot of folks. I think the limitations, some of the hunters are concerned that we're limited in terms of just 3 days, but also the timelines and the type of hunting that could take place, I think was also an impact, had an impact on their conversations as well.
There was another issue that the governor just signed the other day having to do with opioids.
Right.
And now if you have chronic pain problems, you will have to sign an opioid, really a patient's agreement with your medicine provider, your medical provider. But you're also going to be subjected to mandatory urine drug testing. I talked to folks on this, and I know you voted against that final version.
Right.
But some of the doctors I talked to said, yes, it really helps to know whether somebody is abusing the opioids, and that's what the urine testing is all about, the mandatory testing.
Right.
What were your concerns?
Our concerns were that while maybe individual doctors may believe that would be a good path, the medical society as a whole came out against the legislation and was requesting a negative vote and they've expressed the reasons why. As well as the oncology groups as well, some other groups said this is just not the right thing to do. To require someone to have a drug test to be able to go forward along those lines, many folks thought that should be optional to the doctor.
Right.
And
Discretionary with the doctor.
Yeah, and that's what happened. That was the first version that passed the Senate. It passed the Senate 50-0, where it was optional. When it went over to the House, those provisions that talked about a mandatory drug testing were added. When it came back, that's why House Democrats voted, that's why Senate Democrats voted against it, because the mandatory nature of that particular test, in light of some of the things that some of the professionals or organizations were telling us needed to be done.
And I understand, anytime you mandate something, there's always controversy. Jay, we've got about 60 seconds left. Anything else that you think was really important that you folks did this past few weeks?
No, I think you covered some of them, John. I think what's more important are the things that we want to do as we go forward. And I think there's a lot of conversation. We still need to talk about gun reform measures. We still need to talk about things like investing in early learning programs or child care programs, things along those lines. Those are important to members of our caucus going forward. So we're going to continue to pursue that. We're going to continue to pursue increasing the minimum wage beyond the $9.50. We think there's more that we can do in that space. And finally, going back to the statute, we're still going to have a conversation, probably will resonate back in 2021, when we have new members of the Senate, new members of the House, to be able to put into place definitively a statute window to give the victims the opportunity to pursue their claims along those lines.
Well, Democratic leader, State Senator Jay Costa, it's always great to have you on the show.
John.
Wealth of information and knowledge. Thank you,
it.
sir, for joining us.
Happy
We
to
really
do so.
appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Coming up, we'll turn from state politics to national politics and some state politics when the KDPG Sunday edition continues. Stick with us.